Let's point ahead now to the Democratic National Convention, which begins tomorrow in virtual fashion. Next week, I'll be joined by a roundtable of all Republicans as they get ready to have theirs, which begins a week from tomorrow. But let's start with the Democrats. And good to have back with me now Portia Roberson, CEO of Focus Hope, that you see we'll go clockwise from there. She's on the lower left side. Not former Democratic Congressman. Current Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Dingell is there. To the right of her, we've got Bankley Thompson, contributing columnist for the Detroit News, and just below him, Jill Alper from Alper Strategies. Gang, thanks so much for the time. I want to start. Let's not get too far off of the vice presidential pick, which was watched, of course, so closely here in Michigan because of the relevance that we saw. Really, it kind of went up and then subsided and then built up again around Gretchen Whitmer. And Bankley, let me start with you, because I think I've talked to a number of Democrats of a number of different races who were very uncomfortable with what started to become less than a suggestion for Joe Biden. And I think, in fact, you were one of the people that turned it, I think, into a demand in your column that said if he didn't choose a woman of color, it would be fatal. Was that a fair burden to put on, and is it one now that the Republicans can make hay with?
No, I think it was the right move for Joe Biden, Devin, to really switch the pendulum and go with a black female. And this time around, it is Senator Kamala Harris, who is eminently qualified, a distinguished public servant, to now be the vice presidential nominee. This was overdue, and we made the demand, and I think we succeeded in making that demand. There was no way, I saw Governor Whitmer as qualified to be on the ticket. She's spending her 2 years as governor. I mean, she has not done much that we can say on a national stage that merits her to be on that list. And honestly, Devin, I said in my column today in the paper that it was basically, in my view, white privilege. I mean, when you look at Susan Rice, when you look at Kamala Harris, these women are eminently qualified. They had, clear strong national resume, and there was no way how Governor Whitmer ended up on that list. But I'm very happy that, in fact, she's not the one. And Joe Biden had to do the right thing. Black women have been the base of the party.
Let me jump in, because I'm pretty sure Congresswoman Dingell takes issue with that notion.
You know, what I think as women is that, and I look at this as a woman, and I look forward to the day that we're not looking at the color of somebody's skin, their religion, their background, but we're just looking at what their talent is for the job. But for women, there were a large number of qualified women that were looked at, were capable of taking this job. And quite frankly, Bankley, I do differ with you on, I believe Gretchen Whitmer deserved to be in that category, and the rest of the country saw a woman that was well qualified. I love Kamala. Every one of those women are my friends, but we did not need to turn this into the kind of personal attacks that this occurred. And every time, I'm going to say,
hang on, Bankley, hang on.
Every time a woman starts to do well, somebody comes out and attacks them. Men don't do that to each other. And we need to celebrate the fact there were so many talented women in that pool. And I love Kamala. She's going to be great. This is a strong ticket. But why do we have to attack each other?
Now, let me say something quickly, Devin, before you move. We need to correct the record. And I disagree with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. Here's the deal. Susan Rice, Karen Bass, Kamala Harris went through the rigorous media scrutiny. Governor Gretchen Whitmer was never subjected to a media scrutiny.
She certainly was in Michigan.
not even in the national press. Not in the national press. Karen Bass, we knew what she went through. The same thing with Kamala Harris. They said she was ambitious.
Well, let me point out, Bankley, the conventional wisdom that, at least in historical terms, governors often tend to make better presidents than people that have come from other walks of life.
Not a governor who's serving a first time as governor and only 2 years on the job.
All right, I don't want to spend all of our time on this, but Portia, do you want to weigh in?
I mean, listen, I disagree with Bankley. I think Gretchen Whitmer got the right look. She was eminently qualified. She could have gone on the national stage. She would have gotten the media scrutiny that every woman who has ever run for any position ultimately ends up getting. And the reality of it is I agree with Congresswoman Dingell, that this is exactly what we do. I am overjoyed that this Kamala. I was a supporter of Kamala when she was running for president. I would have been a supporter of any woman on that ticket, because not only is it a time for African American women to be on that ticket, and certainly I celebrate that as one of them.
Really shameful that
Hang on, Bankley. Hang on, Bankley. Bankley, hang on. Hang on. It all starts to sound like mud on Zoom if everybody's talking at the same time.
2% of white women voted for Trump in 2016. We're not talking about that.
All right, Jill, I don't know if you want to weigh in.
We're absolutely talking about women being qualified across the board. And the reality of it is that the rejoicing we should be doing today is there were a deep, deep bench of women for Vice President Biden to look at. He will be an excellent president. Kamala will be an excellent vice president. And Governor Whitmer will continue to be an excellent governor, should there not be other national opportunities that come her way, which there very well still might be.
All right, let's move on to what we're trying to see out of these two conventions, which is both of them trying to create like a sense of excitement and a buzz, given that we can't do any of it the way we usually do. But also, Jill, I think more and more there's going to be increasing scrutiny now on Joe Biden, who has not been answering a lot of questions from reporters. I thought the Axios interview that Donald Trump did was fairly disastrous for him, but I also found myself wondering, well, how would Joe Biden do handling those same kind of aggressive but fair questions? And we haven't seen him held up to that kind of scrutiny just yet. And I'm wondering if that's the elephant in Democrats' room right now. How worried are you about Joe Biden's ability to handle things when they start to get tough now?
I'm not worried at all. Joe Biden's been answering questions for 40 years. I think he's probably as tested, most ready, most vetted as any presidential candidate in the history of our country, having served as vice president for 8 years of his tenure in service. So, we had how many debates in our Democratic primary?
That's fair, Jill, but he does tend to trip. He does occasionally trip over his own tongue. He said some things recently about race that were, I think, cringeworthy for even his closest friends.
And so compare that to the president of the United States in his daily tweets and press availabilities. Yeah. That's part of the process. People will make mistakes, and Joe Biden has made his share of them. But if you look at how America is viewing things today, and sure, there's a long way between now and the fall. We know that they have to perform, they have to do the work, the parties have to do the work, and the rest of it. But I personally am not worried about Joe Biden because he's got the right plan. He's ready to lead, and our country is ready for a change.
Debbie Dingell, I don't know how many Democratic National Conventions you've attended over the years. Never anything like this. And that building of excitement really is part of it for either party in trying to move forward. Are you concerned about the inability to do that, given its virtual nature this time around?
Actually, no. I think the virtual nature may actually get more people watching when it's critical. I've been to enough conventions, and I'm hoping that this round will get people to actually look at the presidential the nominating process much more seriously. I think people are paying attention more than we've seen. COVID has turned this country upside down. People are scared about the direction that this country is going in. They don't see it getting better. They're waiting for something to happen this winter. And I think people are more engaged than you've seen them in a long time.
Portia, what are your thoughts going into the week?
Listen, I think first and foremost, Tom Perez and the Democratic Party started planning for a virtual conference well in advance so that they could make sure that people were excited about it, that they had a well put together convention. Unlike the current president, who waited until the last possible moment after having moved it from one location to another location to decide that finally he didn't want to put any more people at risk, even those people who were willing to come out with no mask on and not socially distanced. And they were finally willing to say that we need to do this virtually. So now they have the stellar Scott Baio performing or doing whatever he's going to do at their Republican conference. I think the Democrats are going to have a great convention. I think people are excited about this ticket. And I think, to quote a favorite line, I think Jill will back me up if this was his line. I've always attributed to him. It's time for Democrats to fall in line and stop worrying about falling in line with their candidates.
Bankley, but in my 35 years of covering politics now, I don't believe I have ever seen a race where there seem to be so few people in the middle. Anybody who's undecided, I would love to talk to them because I just don't think there's a whole lot of people still trying to make up their mind, are they?
Well, there's a new racial awakening. But Joe Biden has a lot to do. He needs to be able to explain clearly what his policies are going to be. His 40-year career is marked by some unsavory things. The 1994 crime bill. Let's not peruse over that. To sit here on this Sunday morning and act as if it's all hunky-dory, I think is very disingenuous and it's hypocritical. This is the reason why a lot of black folk stayed out in 2016. Unless and until we are willing to confront the reality and say, look, we need to turn the tables upside down. We need to demand real transformation. Yes, I know black folk are going to support the Biden ticket because Kamala's sister Kamala is now on that ticket. But it's important for us to confront the truth, and we can't sit here and pretend as if it's been a rosy ride with Democrats. It's never been a rosy ride. We've always had to demand. And I'm glad that we finally demanded to have Kamala Harris here. And I think what should happen now, Joe Biden needs to be able to man up and say, look, I apologize for the 94 crime bill. I asked on Sandals that, I apologize for this.
I got about 30 seconds left for Jill. Go ahead, Jill.
I'm almost speechless. I appreciate what Bankalay is saying in terms of there is serious work to be done. There's serious conversations to be had when it comes to what's happening in our country today for African Americans. I think that was a big part of the conversation during the primary. It was African Americans who stepped up at a key moment in South Carolina to put him on the trajectory to the presidency and in his selection of Kamala Harris. But even before that, he has acknowledged that he has learned, he has made mistakes, and there is more to do, and that he has a commitment to doing that as President of the United States. There's
more to do here, too, but unfortunately, I got to get to a break. Gang, thanks so much. We'll take a quick break. Back in more in just a second.